A test of telepathy. First of all, I need to thank both Thomas Sandford, Eric Moyo for doing most of the work and coming to me with lots of ideas on this one. It's an interesting area. This is a research brief, so I will be brief. In a way, it was a sort of test of an idea. So this is just page down here. Okay, so there you go. You can read that. I won't mention the B word, politics and science, I think, obviously, you know. But you all know what telepathy is. So it's this notion that one person can know, gain insights into, understand, obtain information from the mind, conscious awareness, or whatever it is, of another in a non-usual route, okay? Now, I'm pressing this. There's some good evidence for this. Throughout the literature, various studies have shown this. Meta-analyses show pretty robust effects for this. And there are good associations with things like belief and the strength of the relationship between the sender and the receiver. And one of the probably most successful paradigms that's been developed to explore, test for telepathy is the Ganzfeld paradigm. So here we have our sender and our receiver. And in essence, the paradigm is really about reducing the sensory input of the receiver. It's putting them in this sort of sensory isolation. So shining the red light across the ping pong balls of the eyes, pink noise in the ears, etc., laying them down in a nice sort of comfortable room. And meanwhile, the sender either stares at a computer image or an image from a file, wherever. So in a sense, what we wanted to do here is sort of flip this on its head. We wanted to ask the question, would it be possible to increase the signal-to-noise ratio by enhancing the experience of the sender? So here I see the focus very much on enhancing the sort of sensitivity of the receiver. And so the question was, could we enhance the sensitivity or experience of the sender? And one way we thought we might be able to do this is by immersing them in a virtual reality environment. I should thank Mark for posing in this. Obviously, this is the same person, and in real life, we ran participants. So this is our VR kit. It's a standard Oculus Rift. If anybody wants to know all the sort of technical details, ask me afterwards. I'm happy to share all that. So we had our sender isolated in one lab, and they would wear this Oculus Rift. And the idea is we would expose them to particularly stimulating experiences, very positive ones. Meanwhile, in a different lab room, our receiver would be, I'm not sure you can quite see the headphones there, so there's a sort of level of sensory deprivation in the sense that they would be watching this GIF for part of the time, which would expand and contract, and we'd ask them to breathe in time with this, and then at a set time, that would be replaced by an image or a set of 5 images, one of which is the target image that the sender is sort of experiencing, if you like, and then they had to select one. Meanwhile, pink noise is being played in their ears throughout. So it's pretty straightforward stuff. Now, the challenge, I always say this, it's a throwaway line in any manuscript. Participants, we recruited 11 participants, or 11 pairs in this instance, but it was 3 months of hard work trying to get these people to come to the lab. It doesn't matter how many times you say to people, we're running a psych study or a telepathy study, and they all say, oh, that's great, it's really interesting, right up until the moment you say, well, could you come along and take part? So, but we managed to recruit 11 pairs, 9 were identified as friends and 2 were married. We took measures from paranormal belief scale and inclusion of the other as self. So this is a measure of the relationship, the strength of the relationship between the two, because we were interested to see, well, on the one hand, if we could get an effect in terms of telepathy, but if, on the other hand, that effect might be mediated by either belief or the strength of the relationship between the pair. We had various kit, 2-way radios for the 2 experimenters, this expanding GIF, headphones, etc. Now, the images we used were based, or the clips we used, were based on images from the IAPS database. So that, unlike the mainstream world of cognitive psychology, etc., where images, words. There are these wonderful databases where somebody else has done all the hard work rating the valence and arousal levels of these things, and you can match them. That's not yet been done for virtual reality clips. So we thought what we would do is we would take sets of images from the IAPS database. We took 50 images, randomly put them together in sequences of 10 sets of 5, and again, using an online random allocator, we randomly picked one of these images as, say, the target image. We then went and found, or more accurately, the wonderful tech support that I have, went and either found, created, bought, or put together a VR clip that denoted, in this instance, say if that's the target, which it is in this instance, an individual skiing down a slope and jumping off the thing at the end. But the idea is that the images were all matched for valence and arousal. Okay? So, whilst I'm talking about this, I hope to... Oh, yes, that's okay, we'll carry on. So, in essence, what would happen is we created 2 sequences, 2 video sequences, and everything was timed in a particular way. So the individual set up in the VR kit would have 30 seconds of a relaxing environment, I suppose, which is they would perceive themselves as standing on a beach, and it would be full immersed, so you get the sound as well, the waves floating on, coming on the front, very relaxing. And then after 30 seconds, it would fade into a black, and then you'd get a target image would come up, and then they might see themselves skiing down a slope or whatever. We had a frame around them. There's a lot of health and safety things that go on with these because people move about all the time. It's also logistically intensive because we have to have somebody in the lab with the person with the VR kit on to ensure that they don't fall over. And so what would happen is the person experiencing the VR, the sender, if you like, they would go through this set sequence. So they'd have a relaxing beach clip, then they would see or experience a target, then another relaxation, another target, relaxation, another target, and so on. Okay? So 5 separate targets. So this is the standard procedure. What we do is we bring people to the lab, sender and receiver. We get them to fill out the scales. We also got them to exchange a personal item, something small, and weirdly enough, it must be my age, not a mobile phone, or cell phone, sorry. So how many people think that's a personal item? Just, like a watch or a ring, something a little bit more meaningful. So the idea of that is that you could hold it with you and use that as a cue to try and sort of keep that link with the other person in the other lab. So then one of the people, the sender, for example, would go off with one of the experimenters to one lab. They get set up in the VR kit. The other person would go to another lab, the receiver. They'd be set up in front of that computer. And they'd learn to breathe, relax, etc. Then the 2 experimenters would literally sync timing, and they'd use these 2-way radios, and then the whole procedure would start. And it was pretty much set that way. And then the sender would go through that video clip, so you'd see 5 targets, and each time the receiver, after the person's seen a target, they would see a computer screen. It would have 5 images on, and then underneath there's a little blank, and they'd have to just rank the images 1 to 5. 1, this is the one you thought most likely that your partner had experienced. 5, least likely. And, we said, please rank them from 1 to 5. Still somebody ranked all of them 1. What can you do? And then after they'd done that, we then exchanged, so they swapped places. We used a 3rd lab to ensure that there was no contact between the 2 people, so we used like a holding room. So you take the receiver, take the sender out from the VR kit, stick them in the holding room, take the one person out, you get the point. Swap them over, do the same thing again with a separate separate sequence of video clips, and then at the end we just debrief. So the question was, 1 in 5. Were they significantly better than chance at identifying the target? And the answer is no. But when we looked at this, we thought, well, that's sort of interesting. We looked at the hit rate in terms of whether the person ranked the target as 1. As you can see, 26%, slightly above chance at 20%, but not significantly. There was a correlation, or a positive correlation, between hit rate and psi belief, but that's about all. No other correlations were significant. This was interesting enough to make us go back and think, okay, well, one of the reasons we got people to rank these scores, or rank these images, is because we weren't quite sure how to figure out the scoring system. So we went back and we did a post hoc analysis where we looked at the hit rate of the top 2. So we compared that to 40% chance. We did a Bonferroni correction, and here we find a significant effect. So in essence, what we're saying here is that when we look at the top 2 choices, people were significantly more accurate than chance at identifying the target that their partner had seen. Of course, we need to be cautious about this. It's a post-hoc analysis, etc., and all that goes with that. So, no clear effect of telepathy when looking at the single hit rate, which is consistent with what some people find, though a possible indication when we go back and look at the sort of top 2 choices, possibly consistent with others, an association with belief. So where do we go from here? Well, there are lots of things, I think. To some extent, it was a proof of concept, partly, to be honest, because we had this VR kit and no one was quite sure what to do with it. There's an assumption that the images or the clips that we used were arousing. I mean, I thought they were very arousing. I did lots of empirical research myself, studiously going through these experiences time and time again. I actually found them very, very fun, particularly the spacewalk. It's really good. But we're making that assumption that people's physiology changed in some way. It would be very nice to measure that. It would also be very nice to measure the physiology of both sender and receiver at the same time. So there are ideas there. Well, this is also a bit of an intense trial sequence. I mean, to be honest, in the Gansfeld, they might have a single target that somebody looks at for 20 minutes or something. I mean, these were 30-second clips. So it was very much one after the other after the other. That could be a problem. Target duration could be too short. The target pool could be too similar. Were the images distinct enough? Were there enough trials? I'm not going to mention twins. I think it's obligatory when anyone does telepathy research, somebody says, have you ever thought of using twins? So more time for the receiver to relax. This is something I've been thinking about recently. I mentioned to Cal Cooper and David Saunders from Northampton, they've recently taken, or will be taking delivery of these sensory isolation pods. I think it's a really interesting idea, plus it gets away from the whole sensory leakage, is to have somebody where I am down in Canterbury operating as a sender and somebody somewhere else at a different institution, in sensory deprivation, acting as the receiver. I think that might be something we can explore. And then there's this final measure of success. Do we look at you've got to get it right first time. It's 1 out of 5. Do we look at the ranks? Others I know have said, well, you could look at give them 6 possibilities and just look at the top 3, and you're saying, chances that it should be better than 50%. So there are different ways you can carve that up. So I'll be very interested to hear what anybody says about that. Big thanks to Mark and Richard for helping a lot to set this up, and to the PA, of course, for inviting me over to speak about my research. Thank you.